What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So today's video is going to be a little bit different. I was recently reached out to by students competing in the Met2 Design Challenge, and they were wondering if we could talk about their project and talk over some assignments that they've had and just kind of get information on my background and how I might tackle some of their challenges. So we spent about 2 hours together. This video today is a portion of that. Where we kind of work through one particular model. I'm going to be rolling out the rest of the interview throughout the rest of the week and the upcoming days, so definitely stay tuned for that. I hope it brings you some value. If it does, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel so you can get the other segments that we'll be rolling out, and if you have any questions, be sure to leave them in the comments. I'll be looking forward to talking with you guys there. Have a good week. Hello, my name is Josh, and I'm an engineer with Forge Product Development. Forge helps clients start and grow their businesses by providing affordable access to effective engineering resources. Monday through Friday, we offer a free engineering helpline live on our social media platforms, where we help answer questions from people just like you. The clips that follow were taken from one of those sessions. I hope you find it useful and enjoy. Yeah, so what do you guys want to talk about? What can I do for you? What made you guys reach out to me? I mean, I'm happy to chat about pretty much anything.
Our biggest struggle is trying to figure out how to go from an STL to a model to a solid part.
Sure.
I was messing with that thing for like a week.
This guy here?
And, yeah.
Okay.
And I said, screw it. And I just took the dimensions off of it, wrote them down, and started building one myself rather than use the method that I saw you use.
Okay, gotcha, sure.
So I'm curious about some of the rounded objects, something like that. One of the files I pulled off of Thingiverse is a hamburger press. It's rounded, it's swept.
Sure.
Yeah. Or one of the files, it's in the folder Gabino. It is a very rough 3D scan. Cars is in there for the block as well. But I don't know, whatever, you feel like,
we can work through some things.
Mess around with it, you'd like to do a few steps towards building one, point us in the right direction. We would love some tips.
Yeah, for sure.
Love some tips.
For sure. Yeah, let's start there then. I think that's a good starting point. Let's start with the wheel. One, because it's just a lighter file. And two, because I think that it's a good place to start. This isn't bad either, but it's just really heavy. Yeah, I can spin this a lot easier. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn all this stuff off, because ugly models are faster models. And so instead of stop me if you guys have any questions or want me to go on to something else or whatever, but I usually turn all this stuff off because it just makes the model more lightweight and less computer intensive. And so if you're working on a bigger model and your features solve faster and your computer can keep up, then that's a faster way of doing it, right? So that's one really easy tip. So it's imported as one solid surface, and you guys said that you guys had watched that other video, but you can see how there's selectable things in here, right? So it looks like it also imported aligned with planes, which is good. I noticed that the other scan, that Gambino scan that we were looking at, it looks like it was off axis when it loaded in. So we can use the planes that exist in here to just build some surfaces. And I'm trying to think of how I would want to do this. So the general word on the street for SolidWorks is to start with a big solid and then cut pieces away. And that's one way to do it. I don't know if I necessarily always subscribe to that. Because I kind of like building things as I kind of see them, I guess, or see them in my mind. So this is just using the 3-point tool, or the 3-point circle tool within a sketch, right? We've got a sketch on a plane that we know is, whoa, where are you going, friend? we've got a plane that we know is like good to the model, and then just building the sketch around that. And you'll see me moving around. Like, I'm not using a mouse. I actually have a 3D mouse. So I'll be using shortcuts on that. I don't know if you guys have seen it before, but like, it's this.
Oh, wow.
So basically what it does is it's a little puck that free floats, and as I turn it, it manipulates the model. And then these are all hotkeys, right? So like I can use, one of these is delete, one of these is, yeah, like fillet and different things.
Oh, that's
So,
wild. All right, that makes a lot of sense.
yeah. Yeah, because when you watch my videos and I'm like flying around and it's not like I can't even do it the normal way where it's like, okay, rotate, and then like we're gonna like pan, and then we're gonna zoom. Like, no. Like, so if you get one of these, or you have access to one of them, and some of them I think are like the low end versions, like, especially if you're going into industry, like just get one now, because once you use it, you'll be like, okay, yeah, it'll take you a week to figure it out. For a while, your model will just like go off the page and you'll have to like reset it. But after a week, if you're in industry, I mean, they are the bomb. All right. So yeah, so it's basically just build what's here, right? So we have this outer ring, which is a good place to start. And we're going to do an extrude. We're going to use the sketch, do an extrude, and then we're just going to go up to point, up to vertex, right? Yeah, check that. From the sketch plane up to a vertex, because on STLs it's really easy to select vertices, right? So that does that. And we can go in here and expand this out. I usually like expanding this out in the beginning so that you can change colors really easy, or we'll just make this green or something just to see the difference. Now, whenever you're modeling something, and I'm sure you guys have known this already, but whenever you're modeling something, you always look for symmetry and patterns, right? So we know that this has, like, this is 5 patterns, right? So we only want to create this geometry once. Same thing in here. You have these little like bumped lug things, right? We're only going to create that geometry once, and then we're going to pattern it. So let's see here. We'll do another sketch. Oop, not there. I want that to be the front plane. So we'll do another sketch, and a good rule of thumb or guide when you're doing, oh, looks like that's disconnected. Interesting. A good rule of thumb or guide when you're doing model or sketching is you draw what you see, and then you constrain it. So like I'm drawing what I see, like the shape, right? And then I'll go back in and I'll start adding my constraints. So we know that these are going to be tangent through here. And this isn't doing anything with the STL, right? This is all just knowing how this thing was either manufactured or modeled. So we can bring up that original sketch, right?
So you just set those lines tangent to those arcs?
Yep.
Not to them. Okay.
Yep. So, because we know like this is machined, right? So we know that these are tangent in here. So we can start constraining the geometry. I'm going to use a convert entities to bring in that original sketch, and then I'm going to hide that sketch so I'm selecting what I want. So now we're just making this coincident here, because we know that this cutout goes up to the lip, right? And then we'll make these tangent to each other. And again, we haven't touched the STL for any of this. This is all modeling up to this point that is just based on design intent and what we see, or like what we know it has to be. So now to do, say, I'd probably do something like this, I think. let me think of how I'd want to define this, because you want these to be tangent in here. And these are going to be your circles. So maybe we do something like this. Come on, delete. Thank you. So we'll put a third point on this circle. And I don't know if it'll let me pick the midpoint. Yeah, well, cool. So we'll constrain to the midpoint so it just doesn't like walk off. We'll make this coincident. And that's just going to do the same thing on the other circles as well. And see what that gets us. Actually, I don't like that. I want to be able to locate these circles, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it with the radius tool and get the right thing. So what I'm probably going to do is I need 3 points to define a circle, right? So what we'll probably do is we'll just move this out of the way for a second. And we're going to make our circle the same way that we did last time, using that 3-point circle tool. Like this. And then we're going to set this to reference construction. And we're going to set this circle, which is our actual, like what we're going to use to cut, to be co-radial. So it's the same. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. And then we're just going to go around and do that for each point. Come on.
So for reference and for construction, different.
For reference and for construction are different, correct. They're very similar in a lot of situations. So like this is the shortcut that pops up for construction. You can also click it over here. They're very similar in a lot of situations. Like if I go into another sketch and say I want to use this geometry, right? And it's for reference, I can still convert entities and use this, and I can kick, and it'll bring through both the exact same. But what it won't do is when I go to do, we're gonna have to make the base of this and then extrude the cuts out. But say I wanted to like extrude a solid, right, using this sketch. What it won't do is it won't interrupt. See how that circle is not allowing me to select inside of it, right? So it's basically when it goes to build features, it's invisible to the features, but it's usable pretty much everywhere else, just as if it was normal geometry.
Interesting.
If that makes sense. So I know this is the same trick. And the reason I'm doing this circle instead of, and letting this circle drive this corner instead of trying to use 3 points on this corner is because I don't know where this point is on the circle, right? I don't know where, I mean, I can guess and I can say, okay, like it looks like it's right about here, right? And it looks like the STL made a point there, but I'd much rather make a circle and say, okay, this really defines the circle, and then I'll attach this, then I'll attach my radius corner to it so that the corner comes out the right way. Also, watch when you're drawing, you'll see that this popped up here, right? If you, and I noticed it because this line went black, so you guys know the difference between the black and blue lines, right? So fully constrained, not constrained. So when I made this co-radial, it wouldn't allow me to drag this over, and I know it should be able to drag over, and then I looked, and that's because this automatically added this relationship in here. Sometimes it'll add things to, I mean, sometimes it'll add things to stuff that's not even in your sketch, and it says, oh yeah, you want this to be parallel to here, no problem. And then you'll go to try and move something, or you'll get to the point where you're adding in relationships and things will be locked out. So that's just something to keep in mind. And it's all about knowing, like, it takes 3 points to make a circle. It takes, 2 points to make a line. I know that this is going to be fully defined this way. And so then I can go in and kind of use that to be like, okay, what's the minimum amount of relationships I need to create the geometry? So co-radial. Yeah. So now there's your cutout, right? And we know that it's perfectly in the corners, right? We know that we maintained that tangency. And that's all kind of the workflow of, yeah, we have tangency here, right? Yeah, cool. And that's all kind of the workflow of like draw what you see or draw what you're trying to make and then go back in and put your relationships in. Because if I had started out drawing the circle and then defined it in the corner and then drawn another circle over here and then tried to connect it across, I might not have, I might have missed the fact that maybe this wasn't tangent or something like that because the geometry was going to look close, but it wasn't quite perfect. But when you draw it in space, you can put all your relationships in, and then as you go to move it into place or like start adding dimensions to it to start locking stuff down, it'll it will behave in the way you expect it to, as opposed to adding dimensions to something and that dimension might be hiding the fact that it's not constrained properly. If that makes sense.
Yeah, too much sense. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with that one, man. Yeah.
So we're
finding all the ways that don't work.
Yeah, that's how you, yeah, just years of banging your head into the wall. Been there, done that. So we're going to use the same sketch that we did before. So don't try and redraw things, right? If you already have it defined somewhere, just use it again. So we're going to use the sketch that we have before, which is that original one, just the 2 circles, right? And we're going to extrude, and we're going to add these rims in and then cut the things out. So it's the same thing. You can use a selected contour. So right now, when you select a sketch, if there's a single closed loop within that sketch, it's going to try to automatically use it when you go to build a feature. Okay. Now, I don't want that closed loop. I want the closed loop here, right? So I can select that contour and it'll give me just that one. You can also, sometimes you'll have a sketch where you have multiple closed loops and you can go back in and pick which one you want with this selected contours part here. So now we're going up to vertex. So we selected our vertex and we're good to go. So now,
Inner circle for that one, right?
Yep, exactly. And I could have used the outer one. It doesn't really matter. But what we didn't want was the rim, which is why we had to use select contours to pick something else. So now we're just doing extrude cut. You can select the sketch first and then go extrude cut, or you can select the like a part of the sketch and do extrude cut. But when you select the part of the sketch, it's going to automatically try to add it to selected contours. Whereas if we select the whole sketch instead of one part and do extrude cut, it won't add it. Always use through all if you can. It solves much faster than trying than the software trying to figure out like, okay, we're going up to a point, right? So then we'll just pattern this. I'd usually add when you originally model something, you always try and use these planes, right? And you can use the planes to create like reference geometry, so an axis, right? Now we don't want to do that in this because our planes aren't aligned with the part. But what we do know is aligned is our original sketch that we're building everything off of, which we can still see this little point right here, and the plane that we've been building everything off of. So if we click this and this, we can go to reference geometry and put an axis in. All right. And you're always trying to build geometry that is stable. So I could have, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to build a circular pattern of this cut here, right? So if it lets me select it. Well, it's not letting me select it through the STL, so we'll just go and select it from the dropdown. And we'll do a geometry pattern because we know that the geometry is the same all the way around. The difference between geometry pattern and like, if the difference between a non-geometry pattern is it's going to solve that feature in each instance. If it's a geometry pattern, it's going to take the surfaces that it's created and try to apply it in all the instances. So it's much more lightweight because it's not solving the feature each time in a new location. It's just saying, okay, these same surfaces should apply. It'll go all the way around, and so your solve times will be less. So we're going to select this axis. Now I could, not do that. I could have selected, instead of the axis, I could have selected this outer surface, right? And you'll see that it solves the same. It's picking up not the STL, but actually the ring that we drew. And it's creating the axes off that, but it's more stable because this face might change, right? You might go back in the tree and you might cut this face out somehow, or you might add holes to it, or you might add surfaces and the name of a surface within the program gets renamed, right? And it'll break later on. So instead of selecting the surface, we always try and select something that's more stable, or the most stable thing we can. And right now that's this axis, because that axis is defined off of a sketch and a reference plane. The reference plane is never going to move because it's part of the program. And the sketch is one of like the very first features we ever put in. So it's not going to move either. So that would be the preferred method. And then you grab geometry pattern and go like that. What? Select the geometry pattern checkbox. Okay. So for whatever reason, it doesn't want to do geometry pattern. You just deselect it and let it solve each place. And that might be because of the tangency here, maybe. I'm not sure what's causing it. So basically, you would do the same thing for, I was messing with this one in front of the guys, and I ran into so many errors like that. Oh, man. What were the errors coming up? Yeah, that's always good. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I can show you like it's little things. So the key to SolidWorks, the key to getting like really good at SolidWorks is figuring out what things cause errors and then modeling in a way that prevents that from happening, right? So for example, if I did the circular pattern, right? And instead of selecting the axes, which we know is stable, we do the face, right? It's going to solve the exact same way. Like there's just no problem here. You don't know that there's an error. But say we go up to this boss extrude, right? Say we roll this back and, oh yeah, here's a good example. So say we roll this back and we delete this feature. Now it's going to yell at us. Oh, it didn't because it couldn't see it. Cool. So we just rolled that back, right? And we're going to roll this to the end. Error, right? Because we used it as a reference, it's no longer there. But you don't know that, and sometimes your models are huge and there's lots of relationships, right? So if we go back and undo it, please undo. If we go back and we select the axis, which doesn't seem like it's that big of a difference, right? And now we go back and delete this feature. Doesn't care, right? So that's the difference. That's the difference between getting errors and not, I guess, over the long term. And then just solving those errors and troubleshooting those errors, you'll kind of figure out what causes them. So these big cutouts, these little cutouts, you do it the exact same way, right? We can turn this off. And we can see that it's just like more cutouts, right? More circles, just looking at what it would be. You'd pattern those around. Doing this inner hub thing is not too tricky. This is just like another extrude up to a surface of another circle. Doing these circles here would be the same thing. You'd just be using the same tools. Perimeter circle, selecting points. Ooh, I'm on the wrong plane again because I want this to be the front plane. Where you at?
Yeah, that whole right plane thing kind of.
Right. Another thing I would turn on too, is always have your edges shown. It'll probably automatically turn it off when you import a model, either because the template you're using has them off, or because when it brings in STLs, it doesn't want to, it's trying to lightweight the model and not have to show all the edges. But that'll show you where points are that you can pick are a lot easier. So same thing, you just use the 3-point surface and extrude it up. This little cut through thing is just a cut, so no big deal. And then to build this thing here, what I would probably do is I'd probably build a surface. Yeah, actually, you know what I would do? I would take this front plane, I'd hold control and I'd drag it to go to make a surface. Come on. Ooh. Not working, I don't know why. Oh, it's because I'm in a sketch, that's why. Right, there we go. So you just use control, drag it. It'll make a plane that we know is perfectly there, or is where it's supposed to be. And then we can do a sketch here, and it's just the same thing. We're just gonna do, we're sketching on this plane, and then you'll want to sketch on this plane and extrude this little nub and then cut through it later. And you probably want to, I guess it probably doesn't matter if you do, yeah, it doesn't matter. When you go to, it's not letting me pick up the points anymore, which is odd, but we can still do this. All right. So now you know where that hole is going to be, you know where the tangency point is of this, you can just drag it down. You can probably extrude it with the hole in it, but I'd probably advise not to. I'd probably just say put it in as another feature. But we know that that hole is going to be centered in that nub, so we only need 1 point when we define this. All right. And then you can go in and clean this out using trim. All right. So we're going to use up to vertex again and pick one side. And then we're going to do the second direction, up to vertex again. Right. Now we've got that little thing there. Now it's not connected to the main body, but that's okay. You would do that when you added this hub in. But yeah, I mean, I feel like that's most of what's to show here. I think. I mean, it's kind of repeating the same things, or similar features. But yeah, you guys got any questions on it, or is anything like standing out to you, or something that you picked up?
The different, not trying to keep the steps small.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't go for too much. Just little bit. Start with the ring, and do one hole, pattern it. Do the next pattern it. Then kind of work your way in, and then I was looking at that whole center section as one piece. I think it would be a lot easier. easier to do it as a round and like you did that pillar block on top.
Sure. And I think I would stay away from sketch pattern as a rule, unless you need it for some specific reason. But as far as, yeah, maybe we model this middle hub real quick, just lightly.
What's sketch pattern?
If you don't know about it, you don't need it. No. There you go. I just said you to stay away from it. Now I'll show you. This is a good example of a bad use case. Okay, so we're going to draw this, and then we're going to draw an inner hub that we want to be concentric. So instead of using 3 points, we're going to use 1 point. We're going to make it concentric to the original circle that we're basically saying, like, okay, this is our base geometry. Now, what you could do for these little nub thingies here, right, is we're using our 3-point circle again, and we're just going to pick up one of them for right now. And I'm just using coincident instead of, so the 3-point circle thing isn't letting me connect. Sometimes SolidWorks just needs to like restart to relearn what it's doing. But I can just draw a circle and then say coincident on 3 points with the edge, and it'll give me the same thing, or give me what we want. All right, so a sketch circle or a sketch pattern is, you'll see here we're in the sketch tab, right? And this is mirror entities, linear sketch pattern, move, and not so much move you can use, that's fine, but like this mirror and linear, and if you do a drop down, you can get circular. And so in this, some people might say, okay, well, I want to pattern, I know I want to pattern those lugs, right? So in my sketch, I'm going to go in here, and it's looking for the center of rotation as the first checkbox. And so we're going to say it's going to be here. And then the entities we want to pattern are this thing. There we go. And we want to, what is it? It's like 8 of them or something. 6 of them. 10. So you can do 10, right? And we say, okay, well, ta-da, we did it. We now have 10 of those little lug things. Now, you've patterned this circle 10 times, which is good. We've kind of done what we've wanted, but you can see there it wasn't actually constrained. See how these are blue, right? That center rotation point that it defined wasn't actually constrained to the center of the circle, which is what we wanted. And when I clicked it and tried to drag, it automatically snapped to it. So we want to make sure we defined it. And we have 10 defined circles right now, which is fine, but I'd much rather draw the circle once and then a feature and then pattern the feature as opposed to doing it within the sketch. Like same thing with these cutouts, right? We could have taken the cutout and we could have patterned it within the sketch and then cut all those things out as one thing. And I would much rather draw one of them, make the feature, which is the cut, and then pattern that feature, because it's going to be more stable is really what it comes down to. These...
Now that I know what you're talking about, yeah, I've done that so many times.
Yeah.
I've seen that exact same thing happen. Where the first one is completely constrained, and then all the other ones are blue, and you're like, what the hell did I do wrong?
Yeah. It's usually because that center point isn't constrained, but it's I don't know. I'm trying to think of like a good example of when that pattern tool has been the right thing to use compared to a feature. Like features are just so much more stable than sketch geometry, because when the software is looking at the sketch right now, it's seeing all of these. Let me hide the STL because it's kind of hard to see. It's seeing all of these individual
enclosed areas as just that, enclosed areas. So it's going through, and when you go to make a feature, it's basically naming all these little points. So it's naming here and here and here and here and here and here. And when you go to change this to like 11, well, now what's the name of the one that we wanted to select, right? It just added one. We don't know which ones it's going to select now. We don't know what the naming convention is. The software might change where it would like. So there's a bunch of things that change when you change a sketch, as opposed to when you do, if you were to do a feature pattern, like there's only one peg, and then you're taking that pin and you're doing it 12 times, and it's more stable for the software to do it that way. Yeah. All right. So let's look at something else now, I guess, unless you guys got more questions on this one.